All right, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to another great day in American history. When I was taking a look yesterday at our progress and where we're at, kind of figured out that we needed to get a little bit further. So instead of doing a whole entire period of working on your robber baron or captain of industry project today, I'm going to give you a little bit of notes first, and then you'll have the rest of the period to work on it. Your project actually is not going to be due until you walk in the door on Tuesday, and we'll work on it again a little bit tomorrow when I get back, on Friday actually, when I get back, and I'll give you a little bit of notes. So if you guys get your note packets out, we can get started. So yesterday we talked about the railroads and how it's going to change business. This is still a continuation of railroads and how it actually is going to start to impact how people do business here in the United States. So after the American Civil War, what we found out was that North became a very industrial area. And because they were so industrial, part of the reason why it was going to be because of railroads. Railroads were going to be able to transport goods from point A to point B, and it was going to allow business to grow. So we're going to see a lot of industrial production happening from the North, which is going to be different than our agricultural South. By the end of the 19th century, the economy is going to be consolidated with a very, very small number of people. And it's because we are going to start to see very large, big businesses develop. And these are going to be businesses that are going to be owned by one person that own multiple parts of a corporation or are going to own a whole entire industry. A lot of the examples of big businessmen are going to be from our area in Pennsylvania or in the northern part of the United States. So Andrew Carnegie is going to be the owner of Carnegie Steel. John D. Rockefeller is going to own Standard Oil. Cornelius Vanderbilt, who we already talked about, consolidated the New York Central Railroad system. And J.P. Morgan, who we also already talked about, is going to have a banking industry. He was actually, again, so wealthy, he was able to give the government a $6 million loan in order to bail out the railroad industry in 1893. Part of the reason why these men are going to be able to become so rich and become robber barons or captains of industry, depending upon your thought process, is because of laissez-faire economics. Under laissez-faire economics, it was generally believed that a capitalistic system worked best if the government was not involved. If you allowed businessmen to make decisions about the prices and supply and demand, they were going to do what's best for them in order to make a profit. What's best for them, making a profit, means it's going to be best for everybody, because everyone therefore would be able to make a profit, because we would all have jobs, we would all get wages, and our business cycle would continue on and on. So we are going to be supporting the idea that government should not interfere with business because of laissez-faire economics. Following this practice of laissez-faire economics, we started to see that businesses are going to start to be consolidated in a very, very few number of people. And as a result of that, they're going to become very, very wealthy. So when we did not have big business, we only had about 200 millionaires in the United States in 1860. But by 1900, we had anywhere between 4,000 and 5,000 millionaires. And I know you say, well, hey, that's a lot of people. But the population of the United States was much, much larger in 1900 than it was in 1860. So when you actually take a look at the percentage of people who actually had money, you had fewer people who had access to large amounts of money, which is bad. That's one of the things you want to always avoid in a capitalistic system, is having a very small wealthy population and a very large impoverished population. The other problem was during this 40-year time period, there was little or no inflation. So rates were not artificially higher than they should have been. So this means that the economy is on very, very shaky ground. Following, the reason why we're going to start to see that we have a few number of people that are going to be controlling whole entire industries is business practices. And one of the biggest business practices you have is the fact that you're going to try to get rid of all of your competition. You want to create monopolies or trust. You want to create an area that you are the only option for people to buy a particular product or a particular service. Then once you are that only option, you can actually charge whatever you want. So it's not really necessarily that I'm going to charge what is the actual equilibrium price based upon supply and demand. It is a fact that there is no other way for you to buy a car unless you buy the Model T, so I'm going to be able to charge you whatever I want, and since you have no other options, you have to pay it. So that's going to be one of the reasons why big business is going to be so strong. businesses are going to start to look for ways to expand so they can become this large and can actually get rid of their competition. In order to do that, they needed to invite more people involved. They needed to get more money involved, more capital. So a lot of these businesses started to offer partial ownership, and that partial ownership is going to be coming in the form of a corporation. If I establish a corporation, I then have the ability to sell stock to the public, and the stock is basically going to be a small piece of my company that you own if you own the stock. Now, there are some qualifications about what you can and cannot do with stock. So stock is going to be good for the buyer and also good for business. Good for the buyer because if I do invest in a good stock that's going to be prosperous and that's going to make money, then eventually the company is going to give me a dividend. The dividend is the percentage of the profits received based upon how much stock I own. The other thing about the stock that's good is, although I own it, I'm not really involved in making everyday decisions about the company. That's going to be done by the board. So the board makes the decisions. Hopefully they make good ones and I receive a dividend and I make money. The other option I have for a business, if I become a corporation, is I can also sell bonds. And bonds are just loans. So basically an individual is going to loan me money. I use that money to expand my business, get rid of my competition, and increase my profits, and then I give the loan back, usually at a certain interest rate that was already set. The other option I can have as an individual is I can buy mutual funds, which is a basket of stocks. The stocks are diversified. So there's going to be a whole bunch of different industries that are going to be involved in this basket. Hopefully good, prosperous industries. And again, I make dividends and I make a profit and things are great. The businesses are then going to have the extra money so they can expand and get rid of their competition. So things are positive on their side as well. There are advantages to owning stock, and the biggest advantage to owning stock is I am not responsible if the company goes bankrupt. If the board of directors make bad decisions and they are not prosperous, then I don't owe anybody money. I don't owe them money because they bought extra grain, but then the weather was bad and they couldn't plant it, or there was a natural disaster and they weren't able to grow it. That's not my problem. They still owe me money because I did invest. The other thing is dividends are paid by the company. So the company is then going to decide if they do make a profit, how much they are going to return to me along with my original investment. So I still am making money. Now, if things look bad as a stock owner, I also can get out whenever I want and I can sell to whomever I want to sell to, which means that I am in control. Now, all this is great if you are the stockholder. However, it is also very dangerous at the same time because what we start to see is that I've got lots of people investing and they're looking at the market. And if the market looks like it's dropping, people start to panic because they're going to lose all their money and they start to sell their stocks. And then if I happen to be also, say if it's an automobile stock and I notice, oh, the market dropped by a percentage, I better go and sell before I lose all my money. And then other people notice that I have sold, then it sort of spirals out of control, which can lead us to a depression, which actually is going to be what happens when we get to the Great Depression. Additionally, the problem was with a lot of people in our society being relatively poor and living paycheck to paycheck and being basically manual laborers or working in the factories, they weren't able to save money or they weren't able to go to school and they weren't able to do things to improve their economic situation. However, the stock market could offer you the opportunity to become rich relatively quickly. It was a risk to do it, but it was a low risk for the individual because again, if the company fails, I'm not responsible for repaying the money back. So what I do is I start to see that lots and lots of people are going to make these stock market investments. And the investments are going to be something that's purchased in hope that it will increase in value. Now, you've got to be careful with what you invest in because sometimes the investments don't pan out. But the investments are something that are tangible, okay? The investments are going to be stocks, they're going to be houses, they're going to be land. There's going to be something that potentially can increase in value. Investments are not things that are going to decrease in value. Decrease in value is cars, cell phones, video games. So like when you buy a video game, when you used to go out and buy the actual disc from like, the Game Exchange or stuff like that, and you might try to go back and sell it and it was like, all right, I bought it for $70 and I can only sell it and it's all worth $20 because it is not something that increases in value. Investments are only things that increase in value. Today, we have a system that has been changed, and it's changed in order to help people stop relying on the stock market as a way of saving. So what we've come up with is a 401k. And a 401k, basically what happens is that you are going to put money into this account, and your employer also puts money into this account until you retire. You don't have access to the money that you put into the account until after you retire, and you don't pay money on the taxes you don't pay taxes on the money until you retire as well. The money you put in your 401k is going to buy stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So you put the money in and you allow somebody else to use that money to increase your value. And then your employer matches your contribution to a certain amount. So an example is if ExxonMobil matches employees' contributions at 6% of their income. So when you are saving for retirement, if you are just saving for yourself, you're only going to have a small amount of money. If you put in your money into a 401k, then your employer is actually going to match your money so that you're going to double your money or triple your money or quadruple your money by the time you actually are going to retire. So here's a basic example. If you make $50,000 a year and you put $30,000 into a 401k, ExxonMobil is also, because you work for them, going to put an additional $3,000 into your retirement fund. And basically what it means is that you're going to have significantly more money because it's going to be multiplying by that interest rate. What is surprising is that mass majority of the population do not actually have a 401k or put money into it early. Most people wait to put money into their 401k until they're in their late 30s or early 40s, and basically they're never going to be able to make nearly as much money if they start their 401k when they are in their 20s because the number of years that you are investing is going to drastically increase. All right, so one of the guys that we are going to have as a robber baron is going to be Andrew Carnegie. He's going to eventually become one of the wealthiest men during the Second Industrial Revolution. He's an immigrant. He comes from Scotland. He basically has nothing, and he works his way up through the system and learns about basically how to run a business. So Andrew Carnegie first is going to start as a factory worker, earning $1.20 per week. He then eventually realizes that factory work is not the way to go, and he gets certified as a telegraph operator, and he's really good at it. He's so good that the railroad is going to then have a job for what's a top telegraph operator in the area, and he gets the job and becomes an assistant to a railroad official. One of the things he does is while he is the assistant to this railroad official, he learns about how business should be run. He learns about the railroad industry and he learns about business in general. He then decides that he is going to make investments in the stock market in order to try to increase his money so he can start his own company. So he does invest and he's going to invest in the oil companies. He's going to make very large dividends, and then he uses his money from the oil industry in order to buy his first steel mill, which is going to be Carnegie Steel here in Pittsburgh. Carnegie found a way that he could actually increase his profits by making sure that he owned every step of steel production. So instead of buying raw materials from other places, he's going to own the coal fields. He owns all the railroads. He owns all the ships. He owns all the raw materials. He owns all the Bessemer furnaces that he's going to need in order to make the steel. So he owns it all. So he's not paying other people to use it or produce it for him. So eventually by 1889, Carnegie Steel Corporation is the largest corporation in the world, and it is this corporation because he uses what is called vertical integration, and that's when the owner of business is involved in every step of the manufacturing process. So again, he's not paying others to do something. He's doing it in-house, and it's a lot cheaper because he's controlling everything. So what I would like you to do for the rest of the period is you've got time now to work on your robber baron or captain of industry Google presentation. Directions are all in Blackboard. You guys got all of your individuals yesterday. If you happen to have been absent yesterday, please pick somebody off of the list. It's okay if you double up because you were absent and you can't really verify with me who has whom. So go ahead today for the rest of the period and start working on, if you have not already started, your project. Projects are going to be due when you walk in the door on Tuesday. If you have any questions on your projects, I will clear those all up tomorrow when I get back. All right, see you guys tomorrow. Have a good night.